Now it's recording.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Kathleen, and welcome everybody. Good morning. How are you?
Good.
Good, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Great to see you again, Max.
Yeah, good to see you, Kier.
Good morning.
Hello, Laura. Hello, Melissa. So thanks for being here on a Saturday morning. And hopefully this morning we can share some experiences and some ideas that we have with STEM and language support for our students. So to get us started this morning, as Kathleen said, my name is Kirsten Stauffer. I'm currently at Georgetown University, but I have had prior experiences developing STEM-specific courses and working with STEM clients. First, when I was in Germany, I had a bunch of different clients that were all in STEM fields. So at AEG, Siemens, Schuler, Deutsche Bank, Adidas. And then at the University of Colorado Boulder, I also developed some elective classes and also taught some undergraduate classes as well with STEM students. So my experiences today will rely more on those teaching opportunities that I had. So this morning, I'd like to share with you a digital workbook that'll help guide us through the morning and something for you to take away. But first, we'll examine some of our own perceptions and take a short survey just to see how they might impact how we teach and what we teach. And then look at a couple different activities together and then end with some final thoughts and some questions and answers. So how does that sound?
Great.
So to get us started, I'm going to share in the link, and Kathleen has also shared it as well. I have a Google Doc that if you open it, it'll ask you to make a copy, and that way it'll automatically save to your Google Drive. If anyone's having difficulty, we can share a PDF version as well. So it should open something that looks a little bit like this. Does that work for you? Great. So we'll be working through this morning. So you can always use the links here as well to help move us through. So first, since we have a small group, it'd be great to get to know you a little bit. So if you'd like to share who you are, where you work, what you teach, and your interest in STEM and ELL learners or ESL or EFL learners, that would be great. Would someone like to start?
Yeah. I'm Max. I work at American University in the intensive English program. So I'm not teaching any STEM classes, but they're moving our program into another school, and not another university, but another school within the university. And I'm going to have a bunch of new colleagues some of whom are going to sometimes have former students of mine. So I'm kind of anticipating having conversations with non-English teachers about challenges they're having dealing with my former students in their classes. So I'm thinking this will be a great way for me to learn a couple of things to recommend to them, whether or not and some of them will be STEM teachers, some of them will be non-STEM teachers, but I'm trying to get a little bit more of a perspective on the non-ESL teachers' experience and things that they should do when teaching non-native English speakers.
Great, thank you.
I'll go next. I'm Melissa, and I actually don't work with STEM either. I work with career and technical education classes for Fairfax County Public Schools in their academy programs. And so sort of like with Max, that I have the same issue. The teachers who teach my ESL students are professionals. So pharmacy, like a pharmacist, a teacher, a medical assistant. And so they it's always interesting when I watch them teach and I think, oh, here might be something you could do to be more, to help your students understand things better. So maybe I'll get some ideas that I could gently squeeze into to their teaching, right, without stepping on any toes.
Great. Well, thank you and welcome.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Laura. I am right now, and I'm from Medellin, Colombia. I teach in the English for Engineers program at the Universidad de Antioquia. So it's a university, and I teach in the Faculty of Engineering. My students are studying engineering. So hopefully some of my students eventually might go to like different countries and will have like the difficulties or limitations that you might encounter over there. So I was really happy to find this workshop.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And bienvenidos. And Kathleen, do you want to share anything as well, or?
Yeah, I'm one of Kirsten's colleagues in the intensive English program at Georgetown, and I'm also very interested in learning how to support STEM students. Although our students are all over the map in terms of location and geography and interests and professions, but it's always a useful tool to have in our boxes.
Yes, yes, thank you. And so hopefully today you'll get some new ideas to help others as well, but some small things that we can also do in our classes that'll benefit not only the STEM students, but other students in general. So we know that STEM students and minority students are greatly underrepresented in the workplace in the United States. And part of this comes from the experiences that they have coming up in the K-12 system. A lot of them understand concepts, especially as they're older, in their first language, but just have a difficulty communicating about it in a second language. We also know too that the more diverse workplace and academic institutions can be, the better that is for new ideas and the creation of new products and ideas and different ways to keep moving forward in different perspectives. So to get us started, let's take a quick survey. I'm going to go ahead and pop the Google form in the chat. There are just 6 questions. So if you could take a moment to answer these 6 questions just on your personal opinions and beliefs, and the first answer that comes to your mind works great as well. And I'll stop sharing for a second so I can pull your responses into the slide deck. Okay, great. Let me just refresh these slides. I think everybody has had a chance to answer. Is that right?
Yes.
Great. Sorry, I'm just refreshing my slides here. Okay. So many buttons to click in Zoom. Sorry about this. All right, so let's take a look. So the first one, we have quite a mix here with the responses. So, so one does have this strong background, which is fantastic. So our own personal backgrounds can kind of help shape how we teach and what we teach as well. And this one too, that the students know more in a lot of cases. Yeah, so we're more in the neutral to the strongly, and especially at the younger ages too. It's it's likely that we know more, but especially when we're working with university students, that they know more. And here's one too that I've struggled with as well, because you kind of get a little bit of that imposter syndrome where you feel like, oh, I don't know as much in some of these really technical fields as the students, so they're not going to see me as having value. But I think what we can remind them is that they can be the content experts and they can teach us, and we'll help them with the tools that they need to be able to communicate and express those ideas and do all of the different functions that they need to with the content. And so again, that imposter. And so this is good that we don't feel like the imposter. And we like learning. That's fantastic. So we're lifelong learners. I mean, I guess that's why we all got into education to begin with. And I have a pretty good understanding, but I can always improve. So again, it looks like we are the lifelong learners here. So really, to help set our ESL, EFL, ELL students up, they really need the communication skills, because if you give them a process, it's a task that we have them do in the regular English classroom. But if they're not able to explain a process, they might not be able to explain how to solve a problem in a math class. And especially as we move forward with generative AI, I think that it's still really key to give the students the communication skills. So that way they can plug anything into ChatGPT or any of the other ones and get these great answers. But in class, when they have to actually perform on the spot, they're not going to have that access to these other AI tools to give them the answers. So helping them to empower themselves and to be able to continue to grow as language learners, I think is going to be a key. So I have 4 different activities for us. The first one is a logic game. So this is an activity that I created to kind of have as an icebreaker, but also kind of as an informal diagnostic in a math class that I created. So it was a communicating about math course. And so starting on the first day, I selected the Towers of Hanoi, and we'll actually get to practice this. And it was to create a collaborative and cooperative activity to just get them talking in class, but also really to help identify some of the needs that they had to complete the task. And it worked great because there's so many different areas of communicating that they had to do, that it also really allowed them to see like, hey, maybe it's not so much that, you know, I need to learn more about some way of coding or something like that, but I need to be able to express myself, and I need the vocabulary, the grammar, the ability to interact with others as well. So in the workbook, if you go to the activities section, I have the link for the Towers of Hanoi, and I have the instructions and how you can modify the game as well. But I'll go ahead and put the link in the chat. Since we're a small group, would you like to work on it together, or would you like to do this individually to try to solve it and then try to talk together to see how we approached it?
Maybe
Well,
we should do it all together, right? Because I don't know. I don't know how much help I'm going to be. So I think I might need, 3 other people to solve it for me.
all right. So the Towers of Hanoi is a game that has been around for centuries, if not thousands of years. So it's a logic game. Have you seen this before? Now looking at it with the 3 towers, sort of.
Yeah, it looks familiar.
So the idea is to move all of these boxes from this column to this column. You cannot place a disk that is larger on top of a smaller one. So you can only have small ones on top of larger ones. And we should be able to do this in 7 moves. So does anybody want to tell me what I should move first to where? So we'll call this column 1, column 2, column 3.
And we can move from any column to any column, right?
Yes, just
Okay.
as long as a larger disk is not placed on top of a smaller disk.
Top figure to the right, to the third column.
To the 3rd column. So we'll take this one to here.
Middle figure to the second column. Wait. Help me, team, please.
Maybe the 3rd column
The second column.
item onto the middle,
Mhm.
and then the biggest one on the left all the way to the right.
Mhm.
And then the small one to the first column.
Yep.
How many moves do we? Yes, we made it.
4. We can do it.
We got it.
The middle one to the right,
Mhm.
and the little one to the
To
right.
Mhm.
We did it.
Oh, all right.
So we did it in 7 moves. Now, let's make it more challenging. Let's reset it. And let's do 4. So now we have 15 moves.
Well, the little one, we can move it to either of the 2.
Which one would you like to move it to?
I don't think it matters. Have all the way to the right, I guess.
Okay.
Then the next one in the second column.
Mhm.
A larger disk might not be placed on top of a small one.
So
Oopsie.
the small one on top of the in the middle.
Mhm.
And then, I guess that one to the far side. Now is probably where it gets really complicated.
Maybe the smallest one back
Goes to
to the left.
Mhm.
But we have to get rid of the big one
We're
before.
going to,
Right.
because we're going to move the middle one to the right. And the small one now goes to the right. It's probably going to be more, but all the way over. Mhm. Mhm. And now you can move that big one. You might move the small one to the middle. I don't know. And then the next one all the way over. And then the small one on top of that one. And then that on the right to the middle. Should I keep going? The small one all
Yes.
the way to the right. And then the one on the left goes in the middle. And the small one goes on top.
Very good.
All right.
So we did it in 15 moves. We ended up getting it in the middle here, as opposed to the far.
Oh, I missed that direction. Sorry.
It's okay. You can, it works too. This game will let you do it. But does anybody know the pattern that we used or the strategy that we used?
We were trying to open the bottom figure, like to get rid of the other figures.
Mhm. But do you remember the pattern that we used? Did you figure? It's a little easier with the 3 discs. So with the game, there's a pattern for 3 discs and there's a pattern for 4 discs. So the pattern, And I have the answers for this in the, sorry, wrong slide. In the end is with the first one, we can move it from the first column to the third column, and then the first column to the second column, and then the third column to the second column, and then we repeat. So 1 to 3, 1 to 2. So the pattern repeats. With the second one, when we went to 4, we did 1 to 3. So we followed the same kind of pattern. So we ended up on the middle one. But if we had gone 1 to 2 and then 1 to 3 and then 2 to 3, we would be able to get all of them to the far right.
I just picked I didn't realize it. So
Yeah, no, it still worked. It just took us
Yeah.
there a little different way.
I think because Laura chose the third one, I was like, let's just use that one again because she seemed to know what she was doing. So I was just following her.
Yeah, the one with the 3 is usually the easiest one. But one of the ways I like to do this in class is give them kind of like a worksheet. And we talk about counting, and we talk about the cultural difference of counting with the fingers. Because if you have Chinese students, they count with their fingers very differently than the rest of the world. It's almost more like an ASL type of way of counting. So that's kind of like a fun cultural thing. And then talking about like doing the scratch marks as well for counting. So they have to count the number of moves. And usually I don't do it with a computer version in class if we're in person. But then also too, instead of giving them like little pieces of paper, giving them coins. So then they're talking about the value of the coins, and you can stack them as well. So that way you can bring in money, and not only the value, but the name of the coin. And, you know, if you really want to get into history, who the person is on the coin as well, to make that cultural connection. But also having them time themselves too. So it's like a competition between different teams to see who can do it the fastest as well. And then having them work together after they've come up with the strategies and the time and the numbers, then having them determine, can you create a formula based off of how many discs and how many moves? So figuring out a math equation to go with it. And usually they can, especially in college level classes that I've taught, they've been able to figure out the pattern. And so it brings into, well, what is n? Oh, n's an exponent. What does an exponent mean? So bringing in the vocabulary related to the math, because they know how to do this problem. It's just they can't communicate how to do it. And so while we were working on this, there are a lot of different things. So we were working with the collaboration, critical thinking, communication, creativity, so those 21st century skills, but also getting into some more STEM and language related, specific vocabulary, not only in what it means, but pronunciation as well, describing and explaining a process or a problem, oral communication, and also some grammar could be in there as well. So we're targeting a lot of different things in just this one activity. And I found this to be a really fun activity for students to do, and they're engaged, they're hands-on. So it's a great way to make learning more applicable, and they're not on their phones, which I think is really helpful. So what did you think about this type of logic problem?
It was good. I liked how I was thinking about it as an ESL activity also, thinking, okay, you know, we can try to have them use correct, you know, imperative grammar when they're saying, you know, move this to this, which when we were talking about it, we weren't doing, but because it's not really necessary to, but you can, you know, you could add that element into it also.
And also the questioning too, like, why did you do this?
Mm.
As well, to
Yeah.
more of that critical thinking as well.
Mhm.
So kind of along this line, the New York Times has a bunch of different games as well. So they have the word games like the Wordle and Connections where you group different activities together. But they have another one called Tiles. Let me just see if I can bring it up. Since we have but this is a newer game. It's in beta testing right now. But this would be another one that could be kind of fun for students to work on as well, because then they have to describe shapes as well and colors. So the idea is you try to match similar types of items to remove pieces. So for example, if we start with this one in the lower right-hand corner, if you look around the board, there's another one that we could go in many directions. We could start with the center, we could start with the outside, but the colors and shapes have to match for it to disappear. So for example, if I were to click on this one, I could get just the center where it looks like there are 4 hearts intersecting. But if I clicked on this one, I could get both that more spider web look around the outside and the shape to disappear. And so you can continue through the game. Now, the next piece that I need has to have something in common with this one as well.
So you could go down 3 in that same column, and that has a similar 1, 2, 3, 4, octagonal shape.
So this one,
Yeah.
however, we want one that's has green.
Okay, so it can't be only one matching element.
Yeah, so
Okay.
for that one, the color and the shape would have to match. So
Okay.
it'll tell you no match, and then it'll start it over, so you get longer combinations.
So it's fine if it has other shapes as long as it has the ones that we need.
Yes. So now we can start with anyone because we didn't find a match. So it's a little bit like the matching game with memory, but you see all of the pieces and you have to try to figure out what they have in common. So this is another type of activity that could bring in some other vocabulary too, and especially pronunciation as well. Because like with Max saying too, the third one down, and if students mispronounce third, they often say turd, and that could be a cause for embarrassment as well when native speakers are like, what? And they start laughing with the slang of it. So
And I've tried this game on the, like I see it's a New York Times game. I've tried it and a lot of times I'm confused. I don't really know what I'm trying to do, but on occasion I'll like get it right and I'm so now I know.
yeah, so it's fun. It can be kind of infuriating too when you're like, or going for like an easy piece. Like if I were to pick this one, I'm like, oh, okay, this one. But now I need to find one that has a box or a green diamond in it or something kind of similar. Until you get a lot of pieces off it, it can be kind of challenging as well.
Okay. So then like those 2 that are next to each other that have the pink diamonds there on the second row up from the bottom.
Second, this one?
Yeah, that one, and then the one to the left.
Yeah, if we were to click those, we'd
Those, and then that would get rid of 2 shapes, and then that makes the next match easier.
yes.
Okay.
Yes. So for example, here, if we click this one, we'll get rid of that green. Now we could come to the one that Max was talking about here. And then if I click here, now I'm down to 1. And then if I were to click here, I could click this one. So you can go one at a time, or sometimes like Max found where we had multiple, we could get rid of two shapes on that tile at the same time. So a game like this in pairs could also be kind of a long warm-up activity as well, but to help practice, especially shapes and colors and numbers as well. But also the thinking and building some of that critical thinking as well. So this is just another idea of a game that's accessible to speakers of any language as well, because there aren't any words involved. So another idea with that one as well. So let's take a look at what we think are some learning obstacles and learning opportunities for students. So I do have a Padlet, so let me go ahead and share the Padlet. And there are two activities in the Padlet. So we'll just take a look at the first one for activity number 2 first. So here's the Padlet. And I thought we could maybe just kind of brainstorm, and it's also in the workbooks. If you want to take notes in the workbook as well, you're welcome to do that. But thinking about how and where do you learn about student needs? What are some language communication skills that ELL, ESL, EFL students need to succeed in academic settings? And what are some academic skills that they need? And then maybe more specifically, what are some STEM skills that you think they need as well? So in the Padlet, if you'd like, we can just share this out and I can take some notes in here as well. Or if you want to type in some of your own ideas here, that would be great as well. So we'll just work in the first part. And just to, if we're going to stick with these 4 questions, or if we want to create other questions, that's great too. But if you just hit the add the comment, you should be able to continue adding to the thread for each of these questions. So what do you think? I'll open this up for some discussion. So is there a question you would like to start with? Maybe think about like where do we learn about their needs, or especially for Max and Melissa, thinking about working with others, how do we either find out what the students' needs are, or how do we help the other instructor that we're working with find out what their needs are, or areas where they need to develop skills?
Yeah. So
Well,
finding, yeah. Go ahead.
I have an informal form, a Google form, not a survey, but asking information from each of them about their interests and asking them to say what their strengths and weaknesses are. And then I sort of monitor that through the course, but I'm not sure that it's always effective. So I would love to hear other people's ideas about how you identify and then maybe identify again, help them see things that they need to know or need to improve on.
I do the same. I have a form as well. And then doing something like the logic game to kind of see in general with the whole class as well. But like you, I'm not always sure that students know, or like I'll ask them too, like, is there something you would like to tell me so I can help you with your learning? And a lot of times it'll be, no, thank you. And then later I find out that maybe the student had in a private conversation that they have a learning disability or something else. So I don't know that the form is necessarily the best way to gather some of that information as well. So I don't have that at the beginning to help keep that in mind as I'm planning.
I always ask on sort of on the first day of class, on getting to know you day, when I ask them to tell where they're from and what their major is or is going to be, that kind of first day of class stuff. I ask them something along the lines of what's the biggest challenge for you in learning English? So I get an answer from everybody, and I think I get an answer that they think is accurate, but it always ends up not being that helpful because 3 students say grammar, and 3 students say using academic vocabulary, and 2 students say writing longer, and so it ends up being a little bit too general usually to be very informative to what we should focus on. But I keep doing it thinking that I'm going to get something really useful and insightful eventually. So I need to, so the thing that I actually use that is helpful is a diagnostic writing, if it's a writing class, or just sort of the first week of class, they're speaking in class and listening and just observing myself what seems to be their strength and their weakness.
Yeah, I find the diagnostic test to be helpful too. And I was talking with someone recently who started doing diagnostic presentations, like on the second day of class too.
Oh, yeah,
Now,
that sounds useful.
either one where they've had a chance to prepare or more of an impromptu. So that way there's absolutely no assistance from AI, especially if it's like an impromptu diagnostic presentation, which doesn't count for the grade.
I think like when I had my own class, I would do like a little writing, just have them write the first day or something. Because I figure like a lot of students, they don't really know, right? But this is at the high school level. I'd have them write for me, and that told me a lot of times just from that quick writing sample. But now I push in and support in these health and medical science classes, it's one of those I figure it out as we go, kind of like if I'm like yesterday, I was helping the student complete this worksheet for female reproductive system, and we came to the word about delivery, and he didn't know what that was, and I was like, well, when women are having babies, we call that delivery. I said, I don't know why we call it delivery, but just like we deliver food, women deliver babies. Or in the dental class, they have to tell like where their competency, like what supplies they need. And interestingly enough, one of my students didn't know that this thing that she put everything on was called a tray. Yet she goes to the cafeteria and eats lunch every day and puts her food on a tray, right? So you're like, okay. So, mine's just purely by accident many times when I find out where I need to like help them, right?
Yeah, and it's changing that setting too. And a lot of times what we're doing in the STEM classes or using every day, but it's making that association that, yeah, it applies in a new context, I think really can help students as well. Can you think of maybe some, especially in your case too, Melissa, some academic skills that you see students might need as well, or
Well, I definitely think like so they have to be able to present, especially in all of these classes. They've got to be able to explain what they're doing. So there's a lot of that goes on, I think, academically. In the pharmacy class, they have to write papers and do things like that. Read like studies and then like write about what they've learned or whatever. So there is some of that academic component to it. So. But the presentation is big. They do a lot of presenting in these classes.
I don't know about the rest of you, but I really think that presentations are going to take more precedence in a lot of academic settings, just to avoid some of the AI use, because even though you might have prepared something ahead of time, you still have to deliver it. And if you can't pronounce it, if you don't understand what it is that you scripted from AI, that's going to be more obvious than handing in a beautifully written piece.
In my case, like presentations are the hardest part, like for all of my students. Like they don't want to speak, they don't want to answer questions, they don't want to, like they feel bad, accent, pronunciation, everything. Like it's a stress for them having to speak. Yes, like in every setting, and eventually they will move to do a master, let's say, and that's the biggest difficulty, presentations.
Yeah. So I have I'll share a couple different ideas too as we move in to this. So we can help them. We are their English teachers. So I like, for example, I did okay in calculus in college, but I don't remember any of it, so don't ask me to teach it. But there are a lot of tools out there that can help us, but it's going back more to the English of it that can really help. So if we can understand a little bit about the linguistic barriers that they have, some of the background and experience that they're bringing with them, cultural, educational norms, expectations, where they are with digital literacy and technology skills. And then also to another challenge besides the other ones, the funding or time that students have to be able to do a lot of their work, and maybe they're working at the same time too. So some excellent learning opportunities include vocabulary and learning how to decode. So understanding especially prefixes and suffixes, but especially the prefixes, because if you look at the Latin and the Greek prefixes, it carries over from the math, but also into real world. So like unicorn, unicycle, coming from uni, meaning one, university. So being able to build off of those. So I like to have two decks of cards, one green and one like a purplish color, like a lavender color, and have on one side a number and on the other side have the prefix, and then have students try to put them in order based off of the prefix, and then they can flip it over, and then the green for Greek, the purple, the lavender color for Latin, to help with that identification with color, to maybe help them associate, especially if they're a visual learner, and working together. So looking for ways to introduce things that we would do in the language classroom, but focusing on specific skills that would help in a math setting as well. Looking at grammar, the process writing that we do, but really breaking down processes and having them describe things. Because this is a big one. Like if you give them the GRE math problems to solve, they can go through them and solve them, or the SAT problems on their own, but to really be able to communicate that in a way that's effective. For their other ones, they often are lacking some of that grammar and some of that structure as well. But like Laura said too, the social interactions and the public speaking, a lot of them are shy and afraid. Just the general reading, writing, listening, speaking skills are crucial. Being able to do research and being able to do appropriate citations. So I had an undergraduate class and we gave them a case study, and then they kind of had to form their own opinion on it and kind of create their own consulting firm and create a way to solve the problem. And so it involved all kinds of research with it as well, and looking for multiple partners in the community also to solve it for an engineering consulting project. Technology skills as well. A lot of times we think because they are of younger generations that they are very tech savvy, but it's amazing, like just in my class that I have now, the young students too, who when you give them a Google Doc, they have no idea how to format it or how to hand it in correctly by the link or something like that. So thinking about what skills they bring or what they need. Again, thinking about those 21st century skills, moving into academic integrity, and especially with the use of all of the generative AI that's available now, thinking about that, but also helping them understand what are appropriate uses of it. And that if they just rely on it and they have to talk spontaneously in class, they may not be able to produce, and that could be a huge part of their grade. But also thinking about study and time management skills too, and helping some of those students who may not have those skills, but really need those to be able to move forward. So if we just think about numbers, some needs and opportunities here could include just basic vocabulary, pronunciation, because miscommunication could occur, or embarrassment. So I've often had organism confused with orgasm, or six and sex, and just some pronunciation or thinking that they have the right word, but also TH sounds, especially comparing teens to multiples of 10 as well. So all kinds of different pronunciation errors can occur. And then different types of numbers, cardinal versus ordinal numbers, large numbers, the place value system, and that also gets into some conventions, because a lot of other cultures use a comma where we use a period and vice versa. So, so having a comma in the wrong place could create a huge error, either mathematically, or if you're talking about money, that could be a very different story you're talking about. But thinking too about date and time, and our use of our order is different than in most other countries, but also getting into prepositions. So like with Spanish, there's the in, and we have the in at on for time. So different ways of reading numbers as well. So like if I gave someone my area code 303, they're like 30, what? There's an O? And so just knowing different ways that we might pronounce something instead of 303, or 1600 instead of 1600. So different ways of pronouncing numbers. And then also the listening and being able to understand numbers. So bingo is a really fun game to be able to play with this as well, to help with some of the numbers in general. So hands-on practice can also provide a great way to introduce grammar and vocabulary. And you can get into processes, following directions, asking for clarification, the collaboration, critical thinking. So two different activities that I've done. One that goes over really well and is pretty easy to implement is just doing origami and having students in pairs. One may have the instructions and they can tell the other person, but they can't touch what the other person is doing. Or maybe it's a picture that they have to follow and they have to create the description itself for each step in the process as well. Or giving two students the pictures and having them work to figure it out together. And then kind of along this line of origami, I was working with a group of engineers in Germany, and I thought, well, they should be able to help me put together a chair. So I took apart my IKEA chair, took it in, took the instructions in, and of course they were engineers, so they didn't need the instruction booklet. But it took them a while because I wouldn't let them put anything together until they actually said something to their partner that was correct, like with vocabulary. And this got into a lot of phrasal verbs as well. So just some basic tasks, but these men also worked at a company that created machine parts to create parts for cars. So they needed to be able to go to the different locations where these machines were and explain to the workers in English how to fix machines, but how to also work the machines, how to have products come out, and how to be safe doing all of this. So we got into a lot of really technical vocabulary, a lot of safety vocabulary. Phrasal verbs were huge, but processes, explanations, public speaking was huge with this, and teaching and learning. And I was lucky because I actually went to my client. So I was there with them and we could actually work on the machines themselves and they could teach me. So it was their chance to practice teaching me. And then I would help them with some of the vocabulary, or especially grammar as well, to make sure that they could do that. So this isn't always possible, but when possible, using what they're going to be doing. So modeling things in like a hospital setting would be helpful as well. It's like a lab. So moving into a third activity, a lot of us have probably used TED Talks. Is that correct? And why do you use a TED Talk? What do you like about TED Talks?
I like how many different, just there are so many to choose from, so you can find one on a lot of different topics. And you can usually find one where if you watch a minute or two of several of them, you can find one where you think, okay, the person is speaking maybe a little bit slower than I would, which makes it a little bit easier. So I think that'll be good for this group of students.
Yeah, thanks. How about anyone else?
Yeah, I usually play many TED Talks. I teach online, so sometimes I like to have options, so they can have, let's say, 4 or 5 options, and they can choose one that is related to what they want to learn. So they can like play it, listen to the main topic, main idea, important concepts, and then they can explain, like to the classmates, what was the conference that they chose about.
Great. Kathleen, do you use them as well?
I give them, in one of the classes, they have to write a listening log. And they seem to love TED Talks because they can find something that directly relates to an interest, personal or professional, or self-improvement, that really speaks to them, and they understand much of it, because there's such wide variety and differing lengths. So I think the students really love them too.
Yeah, they're very engaging as well. And Melissa's giving the thumbs up. So do you use them as well? Oops, you're muted.
I somehow gave the thumbs up without doing anything, but I have used them, and what I like about them is I don't have to like it. It allows me to introduce a concept or discuss. I don't have to be the expert, right? Like, oh, here's the topic I would like the students to learn about. For me to explain it more, I'd have to do a lot of research, but I can just use a TED Talk. It's sort of like this that question you asked at the beginning. Like I'm not the expert about many things, but I can find something interesting. And then for the other reasons that everybody else mentioned too. But I don't have to be the expert, but I can still give them something where they can get that information they need.
Yes. So these are all great points. And so we know too that students can be more motivated when it's something that they select. Having something like Max said that's like at their level as well, which is great. And there are the accessibility tools since they're YouTube videos, so you can change the speed, you can add the closed captioning, you can often get the transcript as well. But have you heard of TED Ed? So if you like TED Talks, I really love TED Ed because they are shorter activities. They're animated videos, and you can cross all of the different ranges of topics as well. And what's great about these too is they come with some questions, or you can create your own lesson when you create an account and then share it with students. So I've used these for listening logs, I've used these for discussions, and I'll share a couple other ideas how I've been able to scaffold these into other activities as well. And I'd love to hear what you would think as well. So when you land here, you can register as an educator, which really helps. But today we'll just take a look at the Discover. So if you go to Discover, you can go to lessons. And then there are all kinds of topics. So we can search. Is there a particular field that you would like us to search?
Science and technology.
Perfect. Okay, now within science and technology, Where should we go? I'm guessing if we do the Earth in space, there's probably going to be something about an eclipse, since that's going to be on Monday.
Yeah, we should do that.
So let's see if there is. Oh, look at this. Here's the woman who stared at the sun. So one of the great things about these different TED Talks is they're a lot, or these TED Eds, they're a lot shorter. So with some of the TED Talks, they're 20 minutes long, and these are typically under 10 minutes. Like you can see, here's one that's only 1 minute and 6 seconds. And so different links as well. But there are different ways you can search. So just for our example today, how about if I pull up, let me just, let me share sound and share video clip. Let me optimize that. So is it okay if I pull up this one, the woman who stared at the sun?
Yeah.
So you have a video to watch, but what's great is they already come with some multiple choice questions or some true false questions. So after the video, it's a great way for students to interact, and it can be something that's done as a whole class, in pairs or groups, or on their own for a homework assignment. They can preview this ahead of time. They could practice note-taking skills with the video. And there's usually some digging deeper area, and these are links to additional information to help them dive into the material at a different level. And this could be used to create different types of research projects or additional activities to do. And then they often add some discussion questions, and then you can see other people have replied to it. So it could also be analyzing other people's responses as well. So since there are these people that we don't even know who they are, we can look at their responses and we can analyze it. We could analyze it for grammar. So for example, people now, we have electronic devices to gather data, and we have satellites. So we could take a look at this sentence and we could have students do some grammatical analytical work with it as well. So we can still be applying all kinds of different principles from Bloom's taxonomy with the lesson that's already created. But if we go back to the video, I'll just show a small clip of this.
Dell Technologies' smart infrastructure powered by Intel Xeon is staying ahead of changing workload demands and anticipating security threats, empowering scientists with valuable data insights to help conserve coral reefs for years to come.
In the spring of 1944, Tokyo residents experienced numerous aerial attacks from Allied bombers. Air raid sirens warned citizens to get indoors and preceded strategic blackouts across the city. But 28-year-old Hisako Koyama saw these blackouts as opportunities. Dragging a futon over her head for protection, Koyama would gaze at the night sky, tracking all sorts of astronomical phenomena. However, her latest endeavor required the light of day. By angling her telescope towards the sun, Koyama could project the star's light onto a sheet of paper, allowing her to sketch the sun's shifting surface. She spent weeks recreating this setup, tracking every change she saw. But while Koyama didn't know it, these drawings were the start of one of the most important records of solar activity in human history. To understand exactly what Koyama saw on the sun's surface, we first need to understand what's happening inside the star. Every second, trillions of hydrogen atoms fuse into helium atoms in a process called nuclear fusion. This ongoing explosion maintains the sun's internal temperature of roughly 15 million degrees Celsius, which is more than enough energy to transform gas into churning pools of plasma. Plasma consists of charged particles that produce powerful magnetic fields. But unlike the stable charged particles that maintain magnetic activity on Earth, this plasma is constantly in flux, alternately disrupting and amplifying the sun's magnetic field. This ongoing movement can produce temporary concentrations of magnetic activity, which inhibit the movement of molecules and in turn reduce heat in that area. And since regions with less heat generate less light, places with the strongest magnetic fields appear as dark spots scattered across the sun's surface. These so-called sunspots are always moving, both as a result of plasma swirling within the sphere and the sun's rotation. And because they're often clustered together, accurately counting sunspots and tracking their movement can be a challenge, depending greatly on the perception and judgment of the viewer. This is precisely where Koyama's contributions would be so valuable. Despite having no formal training in astronomy, her observations and sketches were remarkably accurate. After sending her work to the Oriental Astronomical Association, she received a letter of commendation for her dedicated and detailed observations. With their support, she began to visit the Tokyo Museum of Science, where she could use a far superior telescope to continue her work. Koyama soon joined the museum's staff as a professional observer. And over the next 40 years, she worked on a daily basis, producing over 10,000 drawings of the sun's surface. Researchers already knew magnetic currents in the sun followed an 11-year cycle that moved sunspots in a butterfly-shaped path over the star's surface. But using Koyama's record, they could precisely follow specific sunspots and clusters through that journey. This kind of detail offered a real-time indication of the sun's magnetic activity, allowing scientists to track all kinds of solar phenomena, including volatile solar flares. These flares typically emanate from the vicinity of sunspots and can travel all the way to Earth's atmosphere. Here, they can create geomagnetic storms capable of disrupting long-range communication and causing blackouts. Solar flares also pose a major risk to satellites and manned space stations, making them essential to predict and plan for. During an interview in 1964, Koyama lamented that her 17 years of observation had barely been enough to produce a single butterfly record of the solar cycle. But by the end of her career, she'd drawn 3.5 cycles, one of the longest records ever made. Better still, the quality of her drawings was so consistent, researchers used them as a baseline to reconstruct the past 400 years of sunspot activity from various historical sources. This project extends Koyama's legacy far beyond her own lifetime and proves that science is not built solely on astounding discoveries, but also on careful observation of the world around us. Following and sharing your passions can lead to incredible things, no matter what your age or experience. Educators, learn how to help your students identify, develop, and share their ideas, passions, and stories at ed.ted.com/student talks.
So what did you think of the video?
I think it was really interesting, really communicating with, visually and with words. So very good for somebody who isn't, somebody who's studying English as a second language. I think has a lot to connect with on there, even if they're not understanding every word.
That helps to give them some of that confidence too, that they understand the bigger picture of it as well. I also like that they're short. This is a longer one,
Yeah.
but especially the shorter ones that are like 3 minutes, a student could watch it 6 times in the amount of time, they might watch one TED Talk, so they can pick up something new each time. I'd say suggesting that they have to watch it 6 times to get an 18-minute video, but that's another benefit of these. They are shorter, so they could be repeated. Kathleen, you mentioned that you have them do a listening log. What kind of information do you have them record in the listening log?
Well, they have to write a very short summary. So they have to write the main points and then their own response, what they thought of it, if it was easy, difficult, liked it or didn't like it. And vocabulary. They have to choose words, find words that are new. And then this has been a challenge recently, write in their own words a definition, how they understood it or what it meant. And what I really liked about this video was the way that specific technical solar flares and sunspots was very carefully, there was a visual alongside the term. And anyway, that's what we do with the listening logs. But AI has been a problem recently with especially with the vocabulary definitions.
Yeah. Laura or Melissa or Max, do you do listening logs as well?
I haven't taught a like a listening and speaking class in a couple of semesters, so I have not done that recently. And I didn't do it regularly, but whenever I did, I thought, yeah, this is great. I should do this more. Because I would let the students like I don't think I gave them TED Ed, but I would give them a list of maybe podcasts or regular TED Talks to choose from, and then they would watch or listen and make the listening logs for a homework assignment. And when they did it, and when they evidently were doing the work, the results were really good. So I'm hoping I'm going to get back into some listening and speaking classes next semester, because it would be great to use these TED Ed videos for that.
Laura, do you use
Yes,
log
yes,
or-
I like to start like every single class with a little video. I haven't used like EdTech, but I use MIT News. Like MIT News are really, really short and tiny. They explain about like some research that they are being done, that they're at the time maybe 1 to 3 minutes, like they are not longer than that. I don't ask them for a very specific listening log. I just ask them to like write down main idea, important details, and if it was something like interesting, useful, something they could see, yes. And of course, you can find it also in YouTube, so they can have like the closed caption. And it's interesting, they can see, like because I have engineering students, they are from different careers, so sometimes I cannot find something for everyone, but at least it's engineering and it's MIT, so they get really interested about it.
Great. And that's a great resource that we can maybe share a little bit later too.
Mm.
One other thing that I do with a listening log activity is I also have them write down a citation, an end of text citation. So with engineers, I'll have them do an IEEE type of citation, or just more generally, if they're more familiar with. So I've done that with classes that we've been teaching the IEEE type of citation, but typically have an APA just to get in the practice of doing those end of text citations and knowing where to look, and knowing that the ones that will generate it for you are not always accurate, that the details might be missing. So using something like Purdue OWL as the template and then having them create it as well. So some other activities that I've done with this too to kind of extend it is have them kind of like the flipped classroom where they do the video watching at home, maybe complete the listening log, but then in class do lineups where you have students stand in 2 lines and have students on the one side explain their video to the student across from them and give them like 2 minutes, and then switch, and students ask each other questions about it, but then switch partners. So you move the 2 lines in opposite directions so you get a new partner, And now instead of having 2 minutes to describe your video, you have 1.5 minutes. So it helps build some fluency and also conciseness as well, because maybe someone didn't clarify something as well in that 2-minute one that the other student had suggested or asked a question about. And then when you move to the next one, you have another chance. And then maybe moving down again to a third partner as well and having like maybe 1:15. So taking time off as they're switching and retelling their summary or main ideas of their video. Another activity that I've had them do is sit with a partner and explain the video that they watched and some key vocabulary, and then the other student can ask questions. But when we come to like a full class share, the student who watched the video is kind of like the coach, and the student who they shared their video with, they're the ones that have to share out what the video was about. So that way the other student is the expert, they've shared it, they've taught it, and now that other student is the one that is sharing as well, to kind of make it a very communicative type of activity as well. So those are just a couple other things that I've done with these videos as well. So any questions so far, or any other thoughts or comments so far? No? So now the last part, I'd like to go back to that same Padlet. And I was thinking maybe we could share some additional resources. So in the workbook activity, I have a few that I've put in as some starting ideas, and we can add these to the Padlet as well. But kind of similar to the TED Talk, the TED Ed, BBC Reel has these really great short videos as well, and we'll add the MIT ones in here too. But all kinds of different topics. Again, these have more video footage, so they're not animated like the TED Ed ones. A lot of times they don't have a lot of the same words, but it's almost like watching a little mini newsreel as well. Also, if we're helping students with different varieties of English, you'll get different pronunciations, especially from British accents as well with the BBC. But you'll find other varieties of English as well with this. So if we could go back to the Padlet again, I'll put that back in here. Maybe we could share some different resources that you like as well. So I had also shared the New York Times does some really great lesson plans as well. And they have some that are for English language learners. And then they also have a lot in the STEM field as well. So they've got some great resources as well. This writing and presenting as an engineer, I thought this has been a helpful link for me. And there are all these short videos from Penn State University, and you can see there are different ones on writing, and then they also have different ones on presenting as well. So this way, again, it's not all us talking, but they can be watching others, and they can be watching people who are in the field as well, and seeing what skills are needed and from native English speakers as well. So this website wasn't designed necessarily for international or non-native speakers, but it's a useful tool for native speakers as well. So what are some different ideas that you have? We'll grab the MIT one here in the link. Oops.
I just put one in that I've been using with a class that I'm teaching. It's from the United Nations and the Sustainable Development Goals, and they have a series of podcasts over the last few years of individuals talking about. There's a lot of science and technology in it, obviously, because it's global warming and some finance and I can't think of any others right now. But it's interesting. It's just audio, and what's interesting is there's an introduction and then the speaker, and then usually, although not 100%, the narrator comes through and recaps the important points and any details that are interesting for the listener.
Great. Yeah, it looks, I just opened it. It looks pretty exciting. And the MIT News as well. That's a cool one too. Thank you. What other?
I have used, I know it's not about science, but I have used the Anne Frank's virtual tour, and it's good for like my students because it has like you go into the house and you can like enter through the different rooms, and they can listen about the different objects. So it's entertaining. Like it's, I just wrote the link in the chat.
Oh, awesome. Let me grab that too. I'll put that in. Yeah, virtual tours are a really great way. I really like doing experiential learning as well, and field trips I've found to be really helpful. So when I was working with a group of Brazilian students who were in the, I don't know if the program still exists, this was several years ago, but it was like a STEM mobility type of program. And these students were extremely intelligent and just super motivated. A lot of them, I'm still following them on LinkedIn and stuff, and they now have PhDs, and some of them have multiple degrees. But working with them, it was really great just going out. So for example, we had a 2-week session on water. So we went to a water bottling facility, but we started at the spring where it started from. And then we had members of city council come in and they talked about water rights usages. And we had 2 different professors on campus that were in hydrology give 2 different presentations as well. But throughout this, we were integrating different learning activities, pre-teaching some of the vocabulary, having them describe processes, taking notes and looking at each other's notes to see which ones were effective, taking quizzes based off of the lectures, having them interact with the city government officials as well. We went to a water treatment facility and learned about how the water from Boulder comes in from the glacier and going through the different processes. And, you know, their eyes are like lighting up as we're walking through the lab spaces as well. So really trying to bring that hands-on approach. And I'm finding that a lot of that too is helping to break down some of the use of AI where they don't feel that they need to, or maybe it's just looking up a word or 2 on their phone as opposed to having AI construct something and then having them give reflections and stuff based off of what they've experienced. So that way AI can't generate how they feel as easily. And knowing that kind of like what we all experienced, you know, that way it's easy to test out some of the inauthentic language that's produced that way. That's just my experience. Has anyone had anything similar or other ideas for field trips? Yeah, and this free rice one, this one's a really great activity too.
It's a good one for vocabulary, and it's fun. I enjoy doing it sometimes in spare moments.
I do as well.
I have been trying also to like have activities to improve vocabulary. So I have been playing this one like sometimes with them, and they can play it also. They can have like more time. Like they have many words. It's interesting.
Oh, this looks
It's good to
cool.
have plays, games. I like games.
And that helps to keep it fun and interesting because like if you think, I don't know, when I think about math, I think, ooh, Like I have to finish my taxes today and I'm just kind of like, I'm glad I'm using software.
I don't miss that part.
Got any other ideas or resources?
I know the idea is not to use AI like that much, but I have found my students to be like a little shy, like trying to talk with other people. But I found like AI place where they can practice speaking. Like I found it like yesterday. I will share I will share the link. Supposedly it's an empathic AI conversation. So it will like sense your feelings and like if you're not ready to talk with another person, like a human being, like it's a nice practice to talk with AI.
Oh, that's great.
Yes, if you try it, it's like really energetic, like it's a voice chat that is like happy.
Has anybody used AI as a language partner at all? I've played with it a little bit. ChatGPT is not as great as Gemini. In Gemini, you can actually do the voice to text, so you can talk and you can then have it, you can listen. But creating a role play scenario where the AI takes the role of, and you have to script it with a prompt carefully, but like a barista, and you tell it that you're learning the language and you want it to give you some different options, but then at the end of your exchanges, you want it to give you some constructive feedback as well. And so it's been kind of fun to play with it that way to see how it can be used as a partner, as opposed to generating the ideas and the communication for them. So I don't know if anybody else has tried that. It sounds like you have a little bit with this, Laura, with this new platform.
Yes, and I have another idea that I have been using. My students are really not very descriptive, like the car is red, okay, red. So I used this our text to image generation, so they can create like nice, awesome images, but they have to give details, like they have to insert some details. So the AI will create like a purple elephant, no, but a purple elephant with wings. They can talk about the background. They can like. I know it's like for kids, but no, I use it with adults and they like it. So yes, that one, and I have another one. I will like try to find it.
That's really awesome. In general, have you found any AI tools that you like to help with anything? I've been using them too, just to see what it's going to produce. And I found it helpful because then I can pick up on grammar patterns that students are using, or words like delve. And I just heard too, delve is one of the most frequently used words with ChatGPT. But especially when I see that, it's kind of like a red flag as well. But some of the grammar patterns are quite repeated, or like starting an essay with a quote. It'll give a quote and then the next sentence is always this quote by, and so it's kind of a good starting point to be like, well, was your work inspired, or did you get some assistance, or I don't know, any other thoughts or ideas with that? No. Well, that brings us to the end of what I had. So I think a lot of times, to kind of get over that fear of like, oh no, this is a discipline that I don't know much about, we can really think about how we can empower our learners and let them be content experts and let them teach us as much as we're going to teach them, to help them make those connections between the language skills and the practical applications as well. thinking outside the box, both for us and for them, and really kind of creating a space for curiosity as well. So so thank you so much for attending this morning and participating. And if you have any questions or feedback, I would love to hear. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, and that is the other link that I use. So they can like use both text to image, and they can see like how was one image different from the other one, and if they were missing details or if they needed to add more information, things like that.
Great. I'll add one to our Padlet as well. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Kirsten. This was a wonderful opportunity to learn and a really great webinar. And thank you for everyone who is here. I hope you learned a lot and will be able to take all of this back to your colleagues in your teaching contexts. And I'd like to remind everyone that next Saturday, April 13th, at the same time, 9 a.m., Ana Lado will be speaking, will be leading a webinar on enjoying picture books that are ideal for developing beginner level English for children and adults. So thank you all very much for attending, and thank you again, Kirsten. And does anyone have any final words?
No.
Great. Well, enjoy your weekends, and
Thank you.
hope we'll see you again soon.
All right.
Thank you so much. And thank you,
Good
Kathleen.
to see everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for everything. Nice to meet you all.
Mhm.
And nice to meet you. And thanks for joining us from Colombia.
I'm sorry, I was like, maybe it wasn't like
No.